So it's my pleasure to welcome Tom Clements, who's Assistant Manager of Logistics at Werner Enterprises. He's going to be giving a talk on the logistics aspects of running a very multinational, very large corporation. We're happy to have him here. Tom's a graduate of University of Nebraska-Kearney in their computer specialty area. And Tom, welcome, and we look forward to your talk.
Thank you, Larry. It's a great pleasure for me to be here at the Mid-America Transportation Center and participate in the fall lecture series. I want to thank Larry and all of the other staff for hosting me and organizing my day today. My presentation will cover technology at Werner Enterprises. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Werner Enterprises is a large trucking company headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska, but we've also got 13 other terminals around the U.S. We're a $2 billion company as of 2011 and publicly traded on the NASDAQ exchange under the symbol WERN. To give an idea of our scale, we've got 7,300 trucks on the road at any given time. Roughly 9,000 drivers, because some of our drivers are obviously teams, and so 2 drivers to a truck. A roughly 3-to-1 tractor-trailer ratio, so that puts us just over 23,000 trailers across the U.S. Our trucks operate in the lower 48 states and to limited amounts in Mexico and fairly regularly on cross-border Mexican-Canadian loads. Beyond that, we also have 8,500 alliance carriers, so we do act as a 3PL and will manage your freight with other carriers. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be on a Werner truck. We're a recognized industry leader, both in IT as well as in broad-based transportation. For the last 4 years, we've won the Information Week 500 Business Technology Innovators, as well as the Green Supply Chain Partner from Inbound Logistics. Those are 2 awards that are heavily recognized for the technology investments that we've made at Werner. Below, you'll see several awards that are more business focused, that recognize our service level and the excellence in operations that we have at Werner. This is a general sales slide, and it really it's titled The Strength of Werner. Werner believes that the core of our strength is technology. The Werner family has invested heavily in technology for many years. It's the core to what makes us able to be efficient and perform at a high level to meet the customer demands. We've got a global comprehensive portfolio, as you saw on the previous map. We do ship to almost every country. We've got offices in Mexico, Canada, the U.S., as well as China, and our most recently opened office is in Australia. We love to promote our award-winning customer service. Werner Enterprises is a brand, and a lot of that brand is based on customer service and getting shipments where they need to be at the time they need to be there. It's similar to you receiving a FedEx package. Your perception of FedEx isn't very good if your shipment isn't there when you want it. So our award-winning customer service allows us to maintain the customers that we have, as well as continue to build our network. We've got a lot of customizable logistics strategies. We do not necessarily partner with one industry and become an expert in that field and how to run the logistics for that industry. We are heavily connected to retail, but also are very comfortable with food and beverage, manufacturing, and other industries as well. The company overall is consistent, credible, and conservative. there's no doubt that we're based in the Midwest. Our comprehensive solutions, as I spoke earlier, we do freight management, and that's where we see a lot of the 3PL and international moves. We also do freight movement. There's no doubt that we own access and own assets and use those to move freight across the U.S. as well as then globally. We do have some trucks on the ground in China, but that's fairly limited, more for permit and regulation needs. And then again, our technological advantages, we believe our systems are more advanced than our competitors. A brief timeline of Werner Enterprises, and I'd like to highlight the three that really focus on technology. In 1992, Werner put GPS units on every truck. So that's been a long time that we've had the ability to track trucks and know where every unit is. In 1998, we incorporated the electronic driver logs, which required an electronic onboard recorder. So at that point, we knew what the driver is doing within the truck, as well as where he is. In 2008, we've really launched our fuel miles per gallon initiatives, and I'll share a lot of technology that we're seeing there, and that continues to be a rapidly developing area of innovation for Werner. The four technology areas that I'll cover today are the equipment and fuel areas. We'll touch on regulation and how we've used technology to accommodate and meet the regulations that our industry faces. I'll go through several systems that we have, and then also finish up with business intelligence, geographical information systems, and our analytics team. Environmental sustainability is definitely a focus area for a lot of people. It's coming commonplace. It could be said that the Midwest is a little bit behind on the recycling efforts and such. Larger cities are getting there more rapidly, but even small towns across Nebraska are really starting to implement recycling programs, and it's continued to broaden its base. That's the same within the business environment, although it's a little bit hamstrung in that there needs to be a desire both to be environmentally conscious, but also profitable. Being a publicly traded company, you're really balancing that. Some of the fuel efficiency initiatives are aerodynamic trucks and trailers. Our drivers 5 years ago had the ability to pick out what model of truck they liked, and it didn't matter if it was aerodynamic or not. It was based on their desires. We've gone away from that, and you now get an aerodynamic truck, none of the big front flat-faced trucks. We just can't afford to pay the extra fuel to run those, and have seen great benefits from standardizing equipment. I'll speak more about the ARROWSHIELD in a minute, as well as driver behavior. Automatic tire inflation systems are another wonderful technology that we've implemented recently. And then our paperless log system, weight reduction strategies. And recently, Werner took possession of our first liquid natural gas and compressed natural gas trucks. So we officially do have a pilot program looking at those technologies. The ARROWSHIELD is the trailer skirting you see on the trailer in this photo. The California Air Resources Board passed new emission standards that heavily impacted the transportation industry. And they said, if you'd like to operate in the state of California, we need you to bump up your fuel efficiency and do that by implementing technologies both on the tractor and the trailer. The largest one and most visible is the trailer skirting. I'm sure several of you have noticed those going up and down the interstate. And Werner started looking into that and found that there's a lot of different companies that sell them, varied results on the efficiency gains as well as the maintenance aspect. They're out in the field, they're going to get beat up, so to speak, and we need to have good control over the quality. So we actually partnered with a plastics manufacturer and did the aerodynamics testing to create our own trailer skirts, and those are now branded as ARROWSHIELDs. They gain 4 to 5% in your fuel efficiency using a trailer skirt versus not. So it's been a very good, successful project, and something that's allowed us to continue to operate in California. I would say we're at 10% of our fleet is currently outfitted with trailer skirts, but that will continue to rise very rapidly in the near future. Weight reduction is key. Every pound of mass that you move down the interstate is going to burn energy, and that's fuel, which turns into dollars. Shippers want to ship as much weight as they can on your truck, and so Werner is very aggressively pursued weight reduction within our tractors and trailers. That includes reducing the wheelbase length, single wide base tires, dead or non-drive rear axles on the tractors. So on the back of a tractor, you've got normally 2 axles, both driven by the engine, but we found that you can really reduce the need to have both of those drive capable and just have one. Also, reduced fuel tank size. You look at the side of an 18-wheeler, and there's 350-gallon tanks, massive amounts of fuel, which when full is very heavy. It's very nice to be able to fill up and be able to go across the nation without needing to stop for fuel, but in reality, drivers do not utilize that capability. Our drivers live out on the road, and what we found is truck stops will give you a free shower if you spend $50. So a driver will spend $50 on fuel every day, so that at the end of his day, he stops at the truck stop, puts in $50 worth of fuel, and goes and takes his shower. They will never top off their fuel tank, because that could mean no shower the next day. So what that translates into is we're carrying excessive weight on our tractors that's never going to be fully utilized, and we can cut that back so that we can haul more cargo. Aluminum wheels, both on the tractor and the trailer, and then aluminum cross members underneath the trailer. Right now, a big portion of the trailer is built with aluminum, but there's a lot of steel in the underlying structure. Driver behavior is also key. I'm sure you know that you can impact your miles per gallon usage based on how you drive. It's even further multiplied when you're looking at 7,300 tractors, running across the U.S. So keys to that are equipment maintenance and educating the driver to know that you need to fully inspect your tractor, fully inspect your trailer, make sure that everything's operating at the highest level of efficiency. Minimizing out of route. We've got optimization systems built to make sure that the miles that we're driving are as highly loaded as possible. There's no need to burn excess fuel if we can minimize that. And then just proper driving habits, speed control, acceleration, being mild and not overly aggressive, progressive shifting, knowing your transmission and your equipment and when you should optimally shift, as well as hard brake monitoring. We've now rolled out a system that allows a alert to be sent from the truck back to the dispatcher every time a hard brake is detected. And so to us, a need for a hard brake probably means that he was following too closely or put himself in a situation that he shouldn't have been in, and we can catch that and educate before there's an incident. The last one is unnecessary truck idling. If you've ever gone and gotten fuel at a truck stop, you see a lot of trucks sitting there idle. Werner's fleet is 100% equipped with idle reducing technology, and you can see in the graph the breakouts of what technologies we use between diesel auxiliary power units, electric, APUs, and S-bar heaters. S-bar heaters are the growing technology that we're really moving to. Tire strategies are very important at Werner. Within the last few years, our tire costs have more than doubled. It's an issue that all of transportation faces. The price of tires continues to rise, and so using those efficiently is very key. As you see in the image to the right, that's a single wide base tires, sometimes called super singles. Wonderful new technology, because rather than having your two dual tires, you're getting it in one. That means rather than having 4 sidewalls, you've got 2, which leads to weight reduction. And there's also a miles per gallon savings. They just roll smoother. The downside is you've now got a very wide base that, to use efficiently, needs to be kept very flat. And that is a challenge. Your tire wear on a super single can often be much more irregular. And in the end, that means you can't wear down your tire as far as you may have if you were using a dual tire setup. The set of tires below, you can see within the hub, there's a little yellow piece and then 2 tubes coming out and then back into the wheel. That's an example of our automated tire inflation system. Our drivers do a very good job of maintaining their trucks, but unfortunately, they hook up to a trailer knowing that I'm just going to have this trailer for one load, and then I'm going to drop it off somewhere and it's somebody else's problem. So I don't necessarily need to go out and check the tire pressure of the trailer tires. They look good from a distance and they'll get me there. So within our trailers, we have found automated tire inflation systems that bleed air off of the air brake system and inflate the tires as needed, to be a wonderful savings for us. We're seeing a lot more tire failures on trailers, and the tires that we have on last significantly longer. Overall, we've got a ton of initiatives on our trucks using various technologies. This graph just highlights a few, whether it's what liquids we're putting into the engine, the gap between the tractor and trailer, the skirting tires, down to the mud flaps. The traditional mud flap was solid rubber, and we're starting to convert to what they call a fly swatter mud flap. If you take your fly swatter where there's 50% air, 50% plastic, that's exactly what the mud flap looks like. It will stop any rocks and debris, but lets the air flow by, and that equates to better miles per gallon. You can also see on this tractor trailer, we've got a trailer tail, which is a fold-out system that produces a cone behind the trailer, and that breaks the wind wrap that creates a vacuum behind the trailer, and that also gains us 4 to 5% efficiency in miles per gallon. What does that mean? It means 20 consecutive quarters of year-over-year improvements to our miles per gallon. more than 50 million gallons saved between 2007 and 2012, and more than 560,000 ton reduction in our carbon footprint from the same time period. Now in the corporate world, I talked about that needing to balance out to environmental sustainability with bottom line profits. Roughly 7,300 trucks, averaging 495 miles a day. Between first quarter 2011 and second quarter 2012, we've seen an improvement from 6.125 miles per gallon to 6.850. While that doesn't seem ultra significant, when diesel was $4.08 per gallon, and per day we're running 3.6 million miles, that means per day we're utilizing over 500,000 gallons of diesel. The difference of 62,000 gallons of diesel at that price is $255,000. So all of these fuel efficiency technologies really do come together to work together and help us as a corporation, as well as produce a better environment and have less impact on it. Within regulation, we have long been concerned with the hours of service and using the electronic onboard recorders. It's key to adhere to those. Our drivers are able to drive 11 hours a day, and we can implement restrictions on that based on our Qualcomm units. The FMCSA is definitely pursuing electronic onboard recorders for all carriers, and that's an effort that we support. We do believe that driving within the hours of service does produce a safer society. With the current hours of service regulation changes, we are concerned with the 34-hour restart needing to include 2 periods of 1 to 5 a.m. That restriction, we believe, would be counterproductive to safety within the roads. It's going to cause a utilization decrease per tractor, which means more tractors on the road. It also takes the 34-hour restart and bumps up the length of time that could be if you don't optimally have 2 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. periods, and puts a driver in the situation that many of them will come off of their restart at 6 a.m. and hit the roads all at the same time, whereas now you can restart and you're down for 34 hours. So trucks are on and off the road at any given time. We feel there will be congestion concerns. Safety is a huge concern and focus at Werner. We've got a computer-based training system that is accessible via the web, and we've got computers in all of our terminals and some customer locations where drivers can go in and take our safety courses. That's also available at their home if they've got internet access there, and will be available in our trucks as we roll out new Qualcomm units. Safety improvement has been a key. We've got several safety KPI scorecards that monitor it heavily, as well as CSA monitors, and then corporate training. Safety is really a focus of everyone. No matter what your job is at Werner, it needs to be centered on safety. And what we've learned corporately is that it's similar to driving. It takes a constant focus. If you're a driver and you get distracted for just a moment, you're at risk for something ill happening. Within our corporation, we need to be focused on safety at all times, because when you remove your focus from safety, you're letting it go about something else in your mind, become distracted, and that's not how we like to operate. Paperless orientation was a wonderful technology that we rolled out. There's a lot of regulation around hiring people, and Paperless has allowed us to go to online applications for drivers. When a driver applies, we've got 30 days where we can do background checks and check his driving history. But beyond that, we no longer have his consent to make those checks. So there are a lot of drivers that will reapply. Due to our online application system now, when you reapply, your application is pre-filled with your previous data, and you can just modify it versus having to start over from scratch, which is the norm in the industry. During orientation, we do an electronic signature capture, and so all of your employment forms that used to take a half a day to get filled out and signed are filled out electronically. You sign once on a credit card type machine that you would see at a major retailer, and then that signature is imaged onto the documents, and then the driver does an approval to have those be legal. Scott Anderson, a manager at Werner Enterprises, won the Professional of the Year award from the Nebraska Trucking Association in 2011 for that technology. At the end of the day, that saves a half a day of orientation class for 300 plus or minus drivers that we hire every week. Driver contact is an area that's aggressively changing. We've got a driver portal that allows drivers to come in and self-service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our office hours aren't always conducive to them asking questions about their paycheck and other things like that. And so we want them to enable them to do that on their own time from wherever they're at. We're also rolling out text messages to drivers. Down below, you'll see in the images kind of the timeline of how you used to communicate with drivers. It used to be he would stop at a payphone, call into the mothership, hey, what am I doing next? Then we moved on to Qualcomm units. Now we've got it in the truck communication, but the current scenario is you've got a driver at a truck stop without a load, waiting for his next load, and now he has to go out through the parking lot, get in his truck every half hour, every 45 minutes, check, oh, no load yet, go back in and enjoy himself, go back out, check the truck again. So we're rolling out text messaging to drivers so that we can text to their mobile device, and based on our system of electronic logs, we won't be texting them while they're driving or while they're sleeping. So it's a wonderful way that we can adhere to regulation in that area. This is an example of two of our lightweight equipment setup trucks. Most of the time we can haul 44,000 pounds of cargo at tops, but using these trucks we can push 50,000. So it's an extra 6,000 pounds of cargo for our customer, which 6,000 is a large percentage of 44,000. So it's at the end of the day means less shipments. Our IT staff, we've got two departments, our AIS group that I'm a part of, Analysis and Information Systems, roughly 130 individuals, 115 in Omaha, and roughly 15 in China. We're responsible for the Smart Transportation Management System, which is a web-based app. We're written on Java with a Cold Fusion front end, and then hosted on an Informix database. We also control document imaging, web portals, and internal applications. Those are written in .NET using C# and based on SQL Server. Our database administrators, our analytics teams, and GIS heavily use DB2 as our enterprise data warehouse, SQL Server, and then .NET for programming applications. Beyond that, we've got help desk, system administrators, and other analytics teams. Our management information systems is the legacy department, so to speak. Roughly 30 IT staff. They work on the IBM AS400, and that system controls all of our asset functions. We've invested heavily over the years, so asset maintenance, asset efficiencies, and optimization are built into that system. AIS uses a Scrum methodology for agile software development, and that's user-driven project request. Our users know the business, and it's our job to enable them to do it more efficiently and continue to be on the cutting edge. Our developers go on sprints of 30-day development cycles to allow them to focus on a given issue for 30 days, and then they just prioritize backlogs items beyond that. So if a new project comes up within the 30 days, it gets put on the backlog and prioritized, and the next 30-day cycle, they will take what they believe they can bite off of the priority list and focus on that for 30 days. What we found with that is that your customer and business interaction is far increased over the traditional waterfall development cycle. The waterfall was more the business would say, hey, I want this, and IT would say, well, I can get that in 6 to 9 months, and really you did a little bit of requirements gathering up front, and when you started actually programming, you didn't really talk to the business a lot. 6 to 9 months later, IT had developed something, and that something we found was usually something slightly different than what the business wanted. So breaking it down and having sign-off and approval every 30 days has brought the business and IT much closer. Our infrastructure is very robust in Omaha. We've got 2 on-site data centers, 1 remote disaster recovery center, also within Omaha, but just on the other side of town. We've got diesel generators and fuel to power our entire campus. I've heard that should we be off the grid, we would have enough diesel to power our campus, as well as sell electricity back to our provider for 30 days. Our infrastructure, we just implemented some IBM DS8800s for storage, and have also implemented the IBM Metro Global Mirror. We're the first company in the U.S. to do that, although IBM does have some partners internationally that have implemented it. The Metro Global Mirror is a means of taking 3 data centers and having them be redundant. 2 of the data centers being on our headquarters campus, that's considered the Metro link, and there's redundancy there. And then the off-site center is the global link, which has redundancy. So really a 3-way redundancy between all 3 data centers. Trends that our infrastructure guys are seeing are Red Hat Linux use is continuing to grow, and then virtualization. We can buy a wonderful server that is just way too powerful for any one use, and we're typically running 20 to 60 hosts virtualized per server now. We have a direct line to China with our office there. They've got some internet firewall regulations and such that it made it more conducive to us to have a direct line from Omaha to China. So as someone in our Shanghai office uses our web-based applications or would even surf the web, their traffic is routed to Omaha and then out to the web from there. So that has been a significant investment for our company, but in the end it's enabled that office to operate very smoothly. We also use Avaya voice over IP phones and are starting to get into some soft calling functionality where we'll build the ability to make a phone call into applications within our company. Our electronic data interchange group, we do 3 million EDI transactions a month, constantly communicating with our customers via EDI. Currently converting to Sterling International to help manage those. And historically, it was very batch process driven. A customer would say, here are the shipments I have for tomorrow, import those into your system. That's kind of a way of the past. Now it's Java message system services and queues and web services, so that as they have a load, they're sending it to us, and we start the execution at that time. One downside is We used to have the ability to, they could call and say, hey, I had an error on that load, don't worry about it, can you delete it out of your system? And we could, because it was just in the batch waiting to be processed. Now, that load may have already been tendered to a carrier. It could be too late. This system's high availability. The offsite location is running just as a production instance. So as the need to balance those transactions occurs, all 3 sites are working simultaneously. We also were the first carrier to roll out email EDI. There are a lot of small mom and pop carriers that just don't have a robust EDI system. And so we could send out a link via email and allow them to click, go fill out a form on the web, and that would return an EDI message into our system. Now that email can be sent to a smartphone, and if it's capable with a browser, they can do that there. And so it's really extended our EDI. Event notification is a key framework that we've recently released. A lot of this was focused around the need for international shipments to know when things are booked, when they make the gate at the port, if they're late, when they've sailed, how that boat is progressing, and then different customs clearances. So we've got a robust event notification system that on any shipment there can be various events that are thrown, and then that can be communicated directly to the customer automatically. Our optimizations team within the Smart TMS is Java backend with a Cold Fusion user interface. We can perform more than 1,000 mileage calls per second. Mileage is obviously very important to any optimization problem that we tackle, and so the need to be able to calculate miles very quickly is important. 1,000 mileage calls per second was very difficult to achieve, but we're there, and that's wonderful because now mileage calculations does not add a significant time to your solve. Our optimization systems they are based on the production rate structure. Many optimization systems will actually use a secondary rate structure that's usually simplified and may not account for all rates and surcharges, but ours are built in on the actual rates. We do account for driver scheduling with hours of service, and ultimately the optimization system is a modified vehicle routing problem, or VRP as you may be familiar with. The solver is a genetic algorithm, and so it's not brute force or a common search algorithm. If I had more time, I'd love to talk to you further about genetic algorithms. It's a way to get a very good solution quickly, although you're not exactly guaranteed to ever hit the optimal solution. So if you're looking at the need for an absolute optimal, that would be a hamstring. Chipper is our genetic algorithm that runs continuously. So as loads come into the system, they're thrown in the pot for optimization. As a consolidation is realized, they're pulled out of the pool, and new orders can come in. So it's just continually running, similar to a wood chipper. If you feed something in, it's going to feed you chips of wood out. A continuous move solver, again trying to minimize the deadhead miles. And then John Henry's hammer. We found that users think that they can outperform the computer, and so the screenshot above you see is John Henry's hammer, and that shows the consolidations that the optimizer has made and lets the user drag and drop rows of the different data tables to adjust the sequencing of orders, add an order to a given consolidation, and it then in real time tells them why that couldn't happen or that it really did cost more. Once again, proving that systems are very good and efficient. Our imaging system is built in-house, and 11 departments are fully automated on that. We handle 45,000 new images a day with over 220 million images in DP2. Retrieval time of less than a second. To put that in perspective, that's 4,400 paper file cabinets worth of images that we don't have to store because they're electronic. We've got a dedicated mobile development team, you'll start seeing Werner apps soon, although they're not out there yet. Our BI team, which I spoke on earlier, the trends that they've seen are 10 years ago, there were a lot of monthly reports. 5 years ago, things were weekly, and now it's absolutely got to be real time. Our GIS team is 4 developers, 2 in the US and 2 in China. We use the Esri software suite, although we did try Google for a short time period. Impact the GIS has is we geocode every shipment record that comes into our database. We do a lot of customer maps and analysis, and this map that you see on the screen is a road closure event. There's a small yellow segment where a chunk of interstate had a landslide, and then using GIS we could pull every tour that would be routed through that landslide area and affected by the detour. Our IMAP application allows us freight visibility. We can see current truck locations, future truck locations. This is what trucks will be in Southern California. So even though he's in Cheyenne now, that we know where he's headed. We've got route visibility to what route we've recommended for the driver. And then within each truck, by clicking on it, you get a lot of details that will tell us what are his hours of service left, and where does he live, and information like that. We can also do alerts and actions. If a truck isn't moving like we think it should, alert via the map. Loads that may be delayed or behind schedule, throw an alert so that we can see what's going on. After those alerts, we're implementing actions. Okay, now I'd like to message the driver through the map so that I don't have to go to another system and do that there. Start assigning loads to trucks via the map so that it's a much more heads-up display environment. What's next with our mapping application? A new user interface and keyboard shortcuts. We found that our users are heavily connected to legacy systems where mice are not the standard, and keyboard shortcuts are key to them doing their job efficiently. Allowing a user profile to save search history and map state, and then embedding training, documentation, and videos. Our analysis team does a wide variety of supply chain analytics, on-site customer analysis, rapid response such as a supply chain emergency, as well as special events. There's a lot of seasonal freight and things that need to be planned out. It could be a Father's Day promotion or something like that in the retail environment. We can route those and design how they should go. We're always looking for improvement with backhaul, and then how we utilize drivers, whether it's trainer teams, slip seats, or pod drivers, where you've got three trucks and 4 drivers, so that the truck is always moving and never without a driver. The ROI that we've seen on supply chain engineering is 10 to 30% staffing based on the level of automation that the customer has by going to a TMS. Mode optimization, 3 to 6%. Load optimization, creating multi-stop truckloads, roughly 8 to 15% savings. Continuous moves, 2 to 5% by cutting down that deadhead. And then vendor supplier compliance, 6 to 15% savings there. So the return on investment is definitely there throughout all of supply chain engineering. A case study that we did with ANHEUSER-BUSCH InBev, we put a new fleet in of 150 trucks in their second largest brewery in Columbus, Ohio. The previous carrier was a bit underperforming, and we came in and really wanted to outdo the standard. So we worked closely with equipment manufacturers to design our lightweight spec trucks, and implemented the delivery of those trucks and also lightweight trailers, so that in the end we've got more than $1 million saved annually just on that account. Again, that's shipping more freight on a lighter truck, which ultimately reduces shipments. And that concludes my presentation. If you've got any questions on technology at Werner, things I've covered, or potentially other questions that you've got, I'd be glad to field those now.
I have 3 questions online to start us off. One question for Nick. Oh, there we go. Great. We have 3 questions online. First question is from Nick Hendricks. Could you please elaborate on Werner's perspective of CNG freight? Is it feasible for over-road trucking or just for centralized local freights due to the shortage of CNG refueling?
Absolutely. With CNG trucks, there is a lack of a fuel network nationally right now. There is a corporation that is dedicated to putting out 77 fueling locations across the U.S. over the next year, and that will enable us to really go nationally with the truck. Although having limited fuel stops, you're still going to have to be very advanced in your planning. I think CNG within the next 3 to 5 years in the U.S. will be focused mainly around a dedicated local fleet scenario where you're not just going random places throughout the U.S. But long term, CNG may very well be so popular that it doesn't matter where you're headed, fuel will not be an issue. There are some performance issues with CNG. They just don't have the torque that diesel has currently. And so we have to be very cautious of our pilot trucks and putting them in places that aren't real hilly, because a full load on a hill will overbear the engine.
A second question from Nick is, what steps would an individual have to take to be able to work at your locations in China? Supply chain management or logistic analyst, or what offices do you with their positions?
In China, our office is in Shanghai, and it was opened up as a business office, and then we've put some IT resources there. Again, as I said, 15 individuals roughly. So you would start by getting in contact with myself, and I will put you in contact with the appropriate people to get hired on there. We've had employees here that have had interest in visiting there and doing short-term stints over there up to a year. We've also had employees planning to make the transition from the U.S. to China or vice versa.
Thank you. Question from the University of Iowa. For route optimization, how does it account for travel time variability such as traffic congestion?
Currently, we are not hooked up to any live traffic feeds for our optimizer. We do have some historical data that backs that up, and that does a good overall job. Unfortunately, that's really as good as you can get with optimization because you're planning the future. With an execution model, we can say, okay, where are you at as a driver? What does traffic look like ahead of you? And start to accommodate. But in the optimization system, you're always planning out a load that is yet to start. And so you don't know exactly what the traffic will be, 6 to 8 hours, maybe tomorrow. And so you've just got to go on kind of a historical average that, hey, if I'm going to cut through the middle of Chicago, that's bad. It's going to be busy. So that's the traffic that it utilizes.
One last question online, and then I'll take a group here. Werner generates a tremendous flow of data that might be useful for public sector freight planning. Can the data be supplied from Federal Highways, State Department of Transportation, or NPOs? Are there ways you might suggest to collaborate and cost share? This is from John Fuller.
We have a lot of data, and certainly with 7,300 trucks, anybody looking to do a study on the efficiency within transportation, that is a gold mine. Werner also considers it a bit of a competitive advantage, and so we do not publish any data that's out there for everyone to utilize. We have in some limited capacities partnered with a specific research entity to tackle a specific project and enable them to have access to our data. But as far as open book policy, that's not going to happen. If you've got desires or need for data, we could certainly talk, but it's an uphill battle.
What is your progress or pursuit of RFID software on trucks?
For what software?
Radio frequency identification?
RFID. Our RFID progress has been slow. We've got some shippers that are using it very consistently. We have a yard management system that uses RFID to put an active tag on each trailer when he comes into a yard, so that the shag truck that pulls the trailer from the yard to the dock door knows exactly where that trailer is parked. And so we're utilizing RFID for that system. But beyond that, it's very limited. Will we get to the point where there's RFID scanners on the truck or throughout the trailer? Likely, but I'd say not in the next 5 years. That's probably 10 years out before RFID is fully incorporated.
The kind of internet shopping using everywhere, what do you foresee the increase of percentage in trucks in the generations?
I am having a terrible time hearing up here.
So the question is related to online shopping and the increases that we've seen in eBay and Amazon. What has that done to the trucking industry's increased flow and those kind of things?
Wonderful question, and it's a stress. You can go on Amazon today, and if you're an Amazon Prime customer, you get free 2-day shipping, and you can order up until 3 p.m. and still get it 2 days later. Amazon has optimized their supply chain. They know that this warehouse is going to deliver to this UPS facility, and they know how many miles that is. We do carry freight for customers that are similar to Amazon, and we have very time-sensitive time windows to pick up that freight and deliver it. We've got a 15-minute appointment that we must meet on the pickup side, as well as 15 minutes on the delivery, and we must average no less than 50 miles an hour during transit. So that has put us in the position where we need to get a truck to the pickup that's full of fuel and a driver full of hours to make the transit, because there's no margin of error in between. They know that the shipment has to be to the UPS facility at 5 p.m. and so we need 45 minutes of transit and then time to pick it within their warehouse, and that backdates to you being able to order it up until 3 p.m. So you as a customer who has demanded great access to any goods bought over the internet has certainly forced the supply chain to be very real time.
I have a couple questions. One is purely interest. What portion of your $2 billion do you spend on insurance for your tractor trailers and drivers? And the second question is, you've made some changes to the trailer for aerodynamics. I know there's small groups out there in the industry that are pushing for side underride guard protection for trailers. What has your company done to look into that, and working with trailer manufacturers? Is that something you think is not really relevant due to the number of side underride crashes that maybe you experience?
I'll address the second question first. We do work very closely with equipment manufacturers for both tractors and trailers. And along with that is the safety aspect. The side impact on a trailer, I think we're going to see that come through, although unfortunately adding that equipment is counterproductive to the weight reduction that we'd like to see. So is it something that we need to progress through as a society? Most likely. You know, there's definitely safety concerns around that, but we really need to study it thoroughly and make sure that the cost benefit is there. So as a company, we don't have a stance that is set yet, but you certainly saw several slides focused on weight reduction, and I think the government would probably need to spearhead any regulation to have that be widely adopted. The first question, can you repeat that?
Well, you have so many drivers, so many tractors and trailers on the roads. I'm just curious on how you manage insurance costs, because those are skyrocketing.
Absolutely. Insurance costs are very significant. Werner is self-insured. So we do carry a small insurance policy that over $10 million per incident would kick in, and an insurance company would pay that. Prior to that, Werner handles 100% of the cost of that insurance. So our insurance cost is directly related to our safety, and I can tell you safety and risk is probably 10 cents a mile type of cost within the industry. So it's certainly a cost that we need to maintain, and that goes out to the corporate focus of safety at all times.
I've got another question from the online audience. Nick Hendricks asks, how is Werner handling driver shortage within the industry?
Absolutely. Driver shortage is very significant. We estimate that every driver we hire costs us in the neighborhood of $3,000 with marketing and facilities and the staff that it takes to do the hiring process. As you can see, we hire 300 drivers a week. There is a shortage of drivers. Part of that is based on industry availability. We compete for a lot of construction workers, and so when construction is a little bit lower, we have a little bit better demand for drivers. It's going to be an issue, and especially with CSA. Now every driver has a safety score that is attached to them, and so there's a very real chance that we're going to see drivers leaving the market due to a history of unsafe driving. That will only increase the need for drivers. We do a lot of work to promote driver satisfaction. Once we hire somebody on, that's great, and we need to keep them comfortable. Our optimization systems, we believe, allow them to run more miles than at a competitor carrier, and ultimately more miles means more money on their paycheck. They are paid by the mile.
Another question from the University of Iowa seminar. For the genetic algorithm used in the optimization, why use it, and is there any behavioral factors considered in building it?
The genetic algorithm is just a wonderful thing to see. Solving any transportation problem brute force can take a long time. There's just so many constraints and things that need to be considered. The genetic algorithm we have programmed to be very similar to a chromosome, where you've got different yes/no flags that all tie together to become the definition of a solution. We populate that optimizer with between 100 and 200 randomly occurring solutions when we start, and then it takes and evaluates each of the solutions, takes the top percentage of those solutions, and then starts mixing and mating two solutions together, and that creates your next generation. The wonderful thing is, as you do that, it very quickly learns what is good and what evaluates, to be a hindrance, and so it can learn extremely quickly. We found that our staff, when they want to optimize something, they'd love to have it in 5 minutes, and beyond 15 minutes is a tough pill to swallow. So the true advantage is in getting a very, very good solution quickly, and we can do that far faster using the genetic algorithm than any brute force search.
One more question from the University of Iowa. How does Werner Enterprises interact with the rail industry? Specifically, are you capable of sharing logistic data for timely shipments?
Absolutely. We do have an intermodal division at Werner that is fully focused on shipping things via the rail. Ultimately, a rail shipment does need a truck most of the time to do a final mile delivery. So we've partnered with several different railroads nationwide to facilitate that. The data sharing that we do is via EDI. When we book a load for a customer onto the rail, we communicate that via EDI, and then they give us updates on how that transit's going, and when it's finally hit the rail yard at the destination. So it's a close relationship, but not much different than it is from a trucking carrier to the customer. We're just the customer at that point. Then our systems expose that data to the ultimate customer that manages the freight, so that they've got visibility. Whether it's on the truck, trail, boat, doesn't matter within our system. They can see where it's at, and that's what they need.
All right, well, we've reached our 11 o'clock right here. We turn over to Dr. Millett to close us out.
Well, Tom, thank you very much for your talk. I think you can tell from the questions, we had a lot of interest. For those out there, Tom has his contact information on the slides. You can contact him there. And for the folks in Lincoln, you'll be around for lunch and be able to answer any other questions you have. So, Tom, thank you very much.
Yeah.